What's going on, guys? In this video we're going to be kicking off a new series on building a link shortener with Rails 6. Before we jump in, I've got a couple of quick announcements. So we've been away for a little while, as if you've followed the channel for a while you would know. We probably haven't published anything in a year or two actually, but we've decided that we want to really get back into this hardcore, so we're going to be putting new videos out every single day for as long as we can stand it, and hopefully it picks up and we can keep doing it. So if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and we will just keep doing this and keep doing this. So that's point number one. Point number two is our business has created a SaaS, software as a service, starter kit, SaaS in a box type product, and we're giving that code base away for free. So if you want that, there's a link just below the video. So click on that and you can download that for free. So without anything else, let's just jump in. Alright, so as I was saying, we're going to build a link shortener. So before we get started, let's take a quick look, because in some of the previous videos, they didn't age great, in the sense that some of the versions didn't work well if you were using like a later version of Bootstrap or a later version of Rails. It may have broken down a little bit for you, so I'm going to make sure I show you exactly what I'm running as best I can. So I'm on Ruby 2.6.3 and I'm on Rails 6.0.2.1. So if you have both of those, you should be good, or if you have something that looks similar. If you have something that's way ahead in the future, or you have something that's a little bit out of date, some of the things we do here may not translate perfectly, so you'll have to take that into consideration if you have a problem. That said, let's just kick off a new Rails app. So I'm going to do Rails new link shortener, or let's call it short link. And let's give it a -t, because I don't want the default testing framework. I'm going to use RSpec. Alright, so that just finished installing, so let's cd down into short link, this Rails S, and let's see what we've got going on here. So it looks like everything's up and running. Let me get a new Chrome window. New window. Let's just do localhost 3000. Okay, so everything looks to be just fine. So we're going to build this app following a TDD methodology for the most part, and I'm going to use this gem RSpec. So if you go to github.com/rspec/rspec-rails, you can grab this. So I'm just going to copy this here, and we'll jump back over into the terminal. And so what we need to do is we need to paste this, then we need to bundle install, then we need to Rails generate RSpec install. So let's go back over to the terminal and do that. Okay, so back in the terminal, I'm going to go ahead and open up the code base here. Close down these default things that open up. And what we're just going to do is go down into our group development test, and we're going to paste that gem that we need, and then we're going to go back to the terminal and bundle. And this is going to take a second to install a few things. So now, if you remember, the second step that we needed to do was Rails generate RSpec install. If you're not familiar with Rails, you can just do Rails G instead of generate. So we can do Rails G RSpec install. And I've got my font zoomed in maybe a little bit too big here. Hopefully this is still readable, but I need a little more space. Maybe one more. Okay. Tell me in the comments if that's too small, and then next time I'll keep it bigger. So now that we have that, we should just be able to run RSpec and run some tests. And obviously we haven't written any tests. We have 0 examples and 0 failures. So if you're not familiar with TDD, the idea is that you write your test before you actually write code that fixes the test. So it feels a little bit backwards at first, and to be frank, I'm probably not the best on the planet, but we'll see what we can manage here. So let's go ahead and get this going. So the first thing is, you'll notice here that we have this spec folder. So what happens is you can create more folders inside of here, and then inside of those folders you create files that could be any name as long as they end with _spec. And what will happen is when you run RSpec, it's going to run any file that has that spec thing in it and execute it as a test. So let's go ahead and set one up. So I'm going to have to make a couple of assumptions here. So let's just go ahead and set a couple of things up, and then I'll do some explaining afterwards. So let's create a new folder. And to start, I'm just going to call this services. And then inside of here, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this Shortener, I don't know the right pronunciation, Shortener spec. So I don't even know if we're going to have in the end a Shortener class or anything like that, but for now I just have a really basic idea of what this app is going to do. So I'm going to kind of keep my tests very, very simple. So the first thing we need to do is require this Rails helper. And essentially this is this file here, which just imports a bunch of stuff and makes it so that you can talk to all of your various classes and things in Rails. That's a vast oversimplification, I'm sure, but that is what it is. So now there's a little bit of setup we have to do that's specific to RSpec. I'm sure there's RSpec tutorials out there and books and so on that will help you with this, but for now just kind of follow along. So we'll say rspec.describe, and then we're going to give it the name of a class that doesn't exist yet. So we're going to describe Shortener. I don't know why, but I keep feeling like I'm misspelling the word Shortener. Maybe I am, I don't know. It's just a weird thing. So we'll stop there, save it, and let's run this. So here you can see that we have an error already. Uninitialized constant shortener, did you mean short link? So in this instance, Rails is trying to be helpful and tell us, hey, you have something that's kind of named like that, but that's really not what we want, obviously. So what we're going to do is in the app directory up here, which if you are new to Rails, this is where most of your code lives, is in this app folder. So we'll create a new folder, and we'll tentatively call it services. I'm not trying to commit to any particular naming at this point in time. I'm just kind of roughing in something. So we may change this later, we may not. Inside of here, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call it shortener.rb, and then inside of there, we're going to just say class shortener. Save that, and now if we run our tests again, we should be passing. Okay, so so far this doesn't really do anything at all. So we've just basically got the setup finished. So let's actually start mapping out what we really want this to do. So the core functionality, and link shorteners are obviously fairly simplistic in terms of their feature set, which is nice. It's a good starting point if you're working on a new project and you're just trying to learn. So anyway, let's actually start trying to plot out what this should do. And so this is how this test framework works. So what you're going to do is you're going to describe the functionality in English, essentially. So you're going to say it shortens a given URL to a 7-character lookup code. Something like that. So Bitly, which is obviously one of the main link shorteners out there, will give you give it a URL, and it's like Bitly / some characters, and they have 7. So let's assume that's what we want. So let's just make up a URL here. So we're going to say URL equals https www.favoriteWebsite.com/articles/how to cook. So totally made up URL, doesn't matter. For our purposes, we really don't care. Now what we want to be able to do is say shortener equals shortener.new URL. And then we want to say something like expect Well, let's think about this for just a second. What else are we going to need here? So just FYI, like I do kind of have a small outline of what we're going to do here, but not all of the details. So I'm kind of working this out as we go, and I do that on purpose because I think it's probably more useful to you that way. So if I get stuck for a second, that's why. So let's say that we want to do something like expect shortener dot shortener dot what do we call that? Lookup code dot length to equal 7. So now if we run this, this is going to blow up in all sorts of ways, and then we'll just start fixing it gradually. So wrong number of arguments given. So now we go back over to our shortener and we say def initialize, and we're going to take a URL. Okay. Now it's going to tell us undefined method lookup code for shortener. So you can tell by the way that I'm doing this that this is kind of a bizarre way to do this in a way, because I'm not actually making anything work. I'm just fixing the errors as the thing tells me. So undefined method lookup code, and then undefined method length for nil class. So what we can do here, which is gonna be kind of annoying for some people probably, but I'm just gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now everything should pass in, yeah. So essentially, if you think about it, we gave it a URL and we gave back a lookup code. That's 7. So now we have to figure out, okay, that's clearly not right because they can't all have the same lookup code. So we should essentially do another test where each URL gets its own lookup code. So I'm just going to copy this test here, and I'm going to change this to say it gives each URL its own lookup code. Okay, so we have this one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this code 1 equals shortener dot lookup code. Then what we're going to do is do this again, and I'm going to say how to bake. I don't know, it doesn't matter. The point is that these things are in fact different. So now code 2 is that shortener.lookup code, and what we're going to do is say expect code 2 not to equal code 1. And let's run the test, and this should fail. And of course it does, because they're both still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the idea behind these tests is that you want to make it so that the test, as much as you can, prove that your code works. And that leads you, if you're really taking this seriously, to do some kind of obnoxious things, to just kind of make sure that you're really, really proving it. So for example, we could do something like this here. So because the way our test is written is just make sure they're not equal. So we could do string equals empty string, and then we could do 7 dot times do in. There's probably a bajillion ways you could do this too. We're going to return string at the end, and then string equals, and then we're just going to do like random number times n dot round. And actually I don't want to say string equals, I want to string append. And let's see if our tests pass. Yes, they do, because these things are obviously going to not be the same. Because basically what's happening here, if you're not familiar with Ruby, is we're just saying, 7 times, and what this does is it counts up. So it's going to go like, it's probably 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for each one. And then it's getting a random number. So if we look in IRB, which is the interactive Ruby prompt, If you just type rand, you'll see that it always gives you just like a random decimal. So let's say we do rand times 3. So we're getting, you know, kind of a weird mix of things here. And if we do dot round, you know, you can see I'm getting kind of a range of numbers, obviously, but if you count up for each one, you're just going to get a random string of 7 letters. So our test passed, but this still doesn't work. So the last test that I think we need to sort of force us to actually make this work is to say it, and there may be another way to do this, but this is what I'm thinking right now. It always gives the same URL, the same lookup code. So let's say that we get this, and in this context I'm going to say code A, or actually I'm going to make it more clear because it's really the first code. We want to do it again, and when we say the second code, and then I want to expect the first code to equal the second code. And this is going to fail. And that's interesting, what happened there. Why is that printing out like that for? Interesting. So I'm going to try something to fix this for now. I'm not going to worry about what's going on with this. Doesn't matter. I'll look at it later. So this is potentially not the solution we'll go with in the long term, but right now I'm just trying to make my test pass. And when you're in this kind of phase, what you're really trying to do is sort of rough out an idea. And my workflow typically is, you know, build out the idea, get it kind of doing what you think it should do, and then reevaluate the engineering aspects of it and how it's gonna like go forward afterwards. So I'll do that off camera and try to figure out if this is really something we can build out further. But for now, what I'm gonna do is say require digest SHA-2, and actually, before we jump in there, I'm going to go back over to IRB and just show you how this works. So, show SHA-2. And let's see if I can remember right. So, it's digest SHA-256, I believe. I think it's maybe all caps. And then hex digest, I believe, is the method. Okay, no data given. So, okay, so what this is doing is basically just creating a hash of this string. And the nice thing about it is, like, if you give it a string, it's always going to give you back the same output. Now, this entire string, and this is the reason I'm saying this is potentially not a great engineering solution, this entire string is almost unique, meaning you know, it would be incredibly unlikely for you to give this, you know, 2 different strings and get the same hash back. But so you can see here, just changing that a little bit, ASDG, you know, these strings are totally different. And so we can always get back the same thing. I'm not a cryptographer, first of all, so I'm not gonna try to explain this in depth here. But you can kind of see the idea I'm going for. So what we're going to do here is say, now we actually need to write the real code to make all the tests pass. So we're going to say at URL equals URL. We need to do an attribute reader so we can read that. And then down here for lookup code, I'm just simply going to say digest SHA-256.hex digest, and I'm going to say URL. And then I'm going to take the first 7 characters. And let's run the test again and see if that passes. Okay, so now we have all of our tests passing. So I guess just a couple of comments on why this may or may not be the best solution and what we're going to do next. So like I said, the entire string that comes back from this highlighted part is highly likely to be unique. It's going to be very unlikely that, no matter what scale you get to as a business, if you're running this product. So if you're Bitly and you're hashing with this, it's unlikely that you're going to get two duplicated lookup codes. So this could be a fine solution. Chopping off the first 7 characters definitely removes that quality. So it's very, the thing is, I don't know how likely it is for you to get the same thing twice. It's probably fairly unlikely if you're doing like a small volume of links. So maybe if you're um, just using this shortener for your own links or something like that, and you're only going to have like 100 links, maybe it's super unlikely that any of these are duplicated. Um, so depending on the circumstances, this could be fine or it might not be fine. And I don't know exactly um, how to tell you mathematically on that one, but I think so. What we may do going forward, what you want to do really is make sure that the lookup codes are unique in the database. So we may implement a strategy that just tries to save it like this, and then if it can't, add an additional character or something. I'm not entirely sure. Um, but anyway, so we'll try that and then go from there. Um, but yeah, so that's basically it for this video. In the next video, we're going to have to start looking more at the actual models, probably saving to the database, and over the next few videos, we'll actually set this up so that you can paste the URL into a web form and then get back your short link. So anyway, that's it for this one. So again, subscribe to the video or the channel if you like this video and you want to see the rest of the series so you can stay up to date. And I will talk to you soon.